2013 is coming to an end. It's going to die in a couple of days. Where are you? Where am I? How have we been? In a minute, we're going to go through Ecclesiastes chapter 3. We're going to cover 13 verses of Ecclesiastes chapter 3. If you want to be turning there and put a marker there, and then I'm also going to be turning to Psalm 30, just for a quick view of Psalm 30 as it relates to Ecclesiastes chapter 3. But I've named this sermon, Go with God's Flow. Go with God's flow. As we come to an end of a year, people decide to get drunk. Many get drunk because, for many reasons, but one is that they want to numb out. They don't want to see the reality of this past year. Perhaps a wasted year. Perhaps great losses. Perhaps great pain. And it's coming to an end. There's something very profound in the human soul. When we're sensitive, when we are aware of the things going on inside, something comes to an end and we feel it. Sometimes it may be the setting of the sun. We can't identify what's really going on, but something is not quiet in our soul. A day is coming to its death. But now a whole year, it's coming to its death. And as most all of us, most humans do, we try to hold on to those things that bring joy, to those things that bring some sense of happiness, some sense of success, strength or whatever. Some of us don't want to let go of teenage years. We may be in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and thinking we're still teenagers. Our bodies tell us the truth. I would say amen to that too. Some of us want to continue to be tough, able to handle anything in life. Some of us want to hold on to the ability to make money. We know how to make money. Other of us want to keep that ability to turn heads. Whoo, look at her. Him, look at her. We want to keep that ability to turn heads. Some of us want to have the ability, keep that ability to impress others. We want to keep on something that was good in the past. And we hold on and we hold on and we hold on. But you know the reality is that there are seasons in our life. There are seasons. There are particular days and seasons that are very different from others. We have turning points in our lives. And some of us may think back and, oh yes, I remember when, and that made all the difference in the world in my life. We have turning points, and then we have seasons in our life. I want you to turn to Psalm 30. If you found it there, Psalm 30, about the middle of the Bible. And I'm just going to go through this psalm very quickly. And all I want you to note as I read it is I want you to see the various experiences that the psalmist had. He went from one thing to another experience to a different one and so forth. And that's life. Psalm 30. We start off, I will extol thee, O Lord, for thou hast lifted me up and hast not let my enemies rejoice over me. I mean, there was a rejoicing, right? A time of, yes, this is good. And then there's a time of crying, like, oh, verse 2 and 3. Oh, Lord my God, I cried to thee for help. Thou didst heal me. O Lord, thou hast brought my soul from Sheol. Thou hast kept me alive, that I should not go down to the pit. At some point he was crying to God. Right? And then there's a time of instruction. Now he's learned something. Now he wants to teach others. Verse 4. Sing praise to the Lord, you his godly ones, and give thanks to his holy name. For his anger is for a moment, His favor for a lifetime. Weeping may last for the night, but a shout of joy comes in the morning. He's instructing others. And sometimes in seasons of life, we feel strong enough, we want to pass that on to others. And then there are times that we get a little cocky. Verse 6. Now as for me, I said in my prosperity, I will never be moved. I got this. I got this down. Verse 7. Oh Lord, by thy favor thou hast made my mountain to stand strong. Thou didst hide thy face, and I was dismayed. Lord, it was you all along. I thought I was hot, but it was you. And there are seasons that we go through that we think we're it. It's like someone said, we think we're a gift to God. Instead of God giving us all kinds of gifts, we think we're hot. And then God hides his face a little bit and, oh, Lord, help me. And we're all torn apart. I mean, there are seasons like that. And then verse 8, there's the times of discipline. To thee, O Lord, I called, and to the Lord I made supplication. What profit is there in my blood if I go down to the pit? Will the dust praise thee? Will it declare thy faithfulness? In other words, he's dying and God is disciplining him. And, oh Lord, don't kill me. If I die, who's going to praise you from the grave? Please don't kill me. There are seasons where we have to be disciplined of the Lord. You see? And then there's change. Verse 10. Hear, O Lord, and be gracious to me, O Lord. Be thou my helper. Thou hast turned me from my mourning into dancing. Thou hast loosed my sackcloth and girded me with gladness, that my soul may sing praise to thee and not be silent. O Lord my God, I will give thanks to thee forever. There are seasons of great joy and change. Something has happened, you see. And so it is with life. So it is with life. And all along we are to be growing and learning. Whether it's a time of mourning or time of dancing, we're to be growing and learning. How are you and I doing where we are presently in life? Are we wanting to be younger, older? Are we wanting something so bad, and we're not getting it, that we're willing to do something that we're not supposed to do? But I want it so bad. We're willing to spend all kinds of money to keep something that has gone by already. That season is gone. Or that season hasn't arrived, but we're willing to do immoral things, ungodly things, unethical, unwise things, because we want it so bad. Where are we? Where are you and I? Are we so dissatisfied with the way things are that we don't enjoy? Listen. Some of us are so dissatisfied and so wanting to keep the past or want the future that we end up not enjoying the simple things that God has given us. You see? And we end up missing out. We end up missing out. This year is coming to an end. It's going to die. You're holding on to something? Perhaps something didn't happen that now, 2014, you're going to make it happen no matter what. Where are you? From Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 13, here's my message to you this morning. Ecclesiastes 3, it's Psalms, and then Proverbs, and then Ecclesiastes. About the middle of the Bible. God's perfect plans for us include us learning from life's ups and downs and enjoying the basics. God's perfect plans includes us learning from life's ups and downs and enjoying the basics. Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 8, I see this is God's life roller coaster, I call it. Life's roller coaster. But it's God's life roller coaster. Verses 9 through 11, we need to be perpetual students. Not professional students, perpetual students, okay? And then 12 to 13, enjoying the basics. Enjoying the basics. Now, I'm going to read the passage, Ecclesiastes 3, verses 1 through 13. And before I read it, I want you to note a couple of things. Number one is that God is sovereign. The end of Ecclesiastes 2 and after this passage, Ecclesiastes 3 verses 14 and following hits the sovereignty of God that's being highlighted. Okay? The absolute sovereignty of God. And we must bow down to the sovereignty of God. So if there's the sovereignty of God before and after this passage, guess what this passage includes? It includes the sovereignty of God. The sovereignty of God simply means that He's boss. He is top dog. What He says goes. He is it. Okay? And we can kick and scream and we can yell and do all kinds of things. He's sovereign. And this is part of this passage that I'm going to be reading. Okay? Like I tell someone, they kick and scream against the way life is working. And I tell them, look, you're fighting against God. And guess who's going to win? Don't fight against God. So this passage is about the sovereignty of God. But then also, I want you to note that verses 2 to 8 is kind of like a clock. Tick, tock, tick, tock. So as I read it, you'll see this tick, tock. And when you have a clock and you want to achieve something, did you notice the clock doesn't care whether you achieve it or not? It just keeps going. It just keeps going. Stop! Tick, tock, tick. You can throw a hammer at it. Time will keep going, you see. And that's the point as I read this passage, at least those verses. Then I want you to know, too, as I read verses 2, I'm going to read the whole passage, but especially verse 2 and following to all the way to verse 8, sometimes there's a reversal. Sometimes it's the positive and then the negative, the positive and then the negative, and then there's a negative and then the positive, the negative and then the positive, and then back to the positive and then the negative. What's the point? The point is this, that we can never tell. We can never tell what's going to come first, you see. Some things are, we kind of expect them and they happen, but sometimes it doesn't, you see. And that's the whole point, that God is sovereign. He's the one that has His timetable going. And we cannot control that. It's His timetable. And the best thing for us to do, which is the title of the sermon, go with God's flow. We must go with God's flow. So let me read it before we look at the details. And as I read, I will mention a couple of things. So we begin. Ecclesiastes 3 and verse 1. There is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven. Now, you see time there is used twice, but the Hebrew has two different words there. The first word is for, there is a particular date. A particular date set for something. The second word for time is more of a season, an occasion, an expanded time. And so you need to note that because verses 2 to 8 uses that second word for time. There's a season, okay? And it'll be important for you to understand what's happening in this passage. The other thing I want to point out in verse 1 is that when it says the second time, when there's a time for every event under heaven, literally it means there is an appropriate time for every delight, for something that brings pleasure to us, something that's good. Maybe not pleasurable, but it's good. But there's a season for it, okay? And God is the one that sovereignly works that out, okay? So, with that understanding, there is an appointed date for everything, and there is a season for every delight under heaven, meaning in this lifetime. We're not talking about heaven. Oh, that's going to be awesome. But as we live out this life, God has an appointed season, occasions, okay? And so now He begins with this time unstoppable time, the sovereign work of God. And you see what's going on here. A time to give birth and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to tear down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. And a time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. A time to embrace and a time to shun embracing. A time to search and a time to give up as lost. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear apart and a time to sew together. A time to be silent and a time to speak. And a time to love and a time to hate. And a time for war and a time for peace. What profit is there to the worker from that which he toils? I have seen the task which God has given the sons of men with which to occupy themselves. He has made everything appropriate in its time. He has also set eternity in their heart. Yet so that man will not find out the work of which God has done from the beginning even to the end. I know that there is nothing better for them than to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. Moreover, that every man should eat, who eats and drinks, sees good in all his labor. It is a gift of God. It is a taste of God. God's perfect plans for us includes us learning from life's ups and downs and enjoying the basics. First of all, then, this roller coaster. And so he gives us illustrations of what? Illustrations of God's sovereignty and how he gives certain seasons of our life. Right? And so with that understanding, in the verse 2, there is a time to be born and a time to die. Well, there are seasons. There are seasons of birth and seasons of death. What does that mean? There are seasons of being fathers and mothers. It's a great time. I remember one of my brothers told my wife, "It seems like every time we see you, you're pregnant." And sure enough, we had one and then another and then another and then another. It was great. But that time is over. That time is over. A time to father children. Seasons that God has given. And God says, gives that. And then there are times of death. It's a time to give birth and a time to die. At funerals, one of the most silent questions is why? Sometimes we don't ask it because it's going to hurt someone. But why? Why? Sometimes we see it coming and we understand, but many times we do not. 3 or 4 days ago, I was talking to one of my sons on the phone, and all of a sudden he goes, "Oh, wow, oh." And I'm going, what? He's like, "Oh," like, "Tell me what?" And he saw this car wrapped around a telephone post, right there close to our house. Oh my. Sure enough, we saw the news, and yep, young man had gotten killed. Right there in a telephone post. Last night, I left work, and it was already getting a little dark, and I was going by the telephone post, and there were probably 15, 20 people around that telephone post, laying some roses, some flowers around that telephone post. We just don't know. There's a date for death. There's a season for death. You know, some of us have gotten old enough where all of a sudden our parents have died or are dying. Both of my parents have died. And then some of our peers, those of the same age are dying. And we begin to think about our own mortality. Seasons of life. Seasons of life. And we cannot control that. And we must give in to what God has appointed. You see? I can't hold on to, I got to continue being a father. Oh my goodness, what a disaster that would be. You know? That's the point here. It is God who gives the seasons, the occasions. A time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. It's a time to be productive. Literally, here is the agricultural time. A time to be productive and a time when our productivity will come to an end. A week and a half ago, actually 2.5 weeks ago, maybe longer than that, I don't know, I started building a fire pit for our children to enjoy. When people come over, those of you that are coming on New Year's Eve, you can enjoy the fire pit I made. So I started off. And I built the foundation. Oh, that looks nice. I backhurt a little bit, but that looks nice. And then, several days later, I started laying the brick. Oh, my goodness. Let me tell you, I finished that thing, but never again. My back and my shoulders and everything hurt. It's like I'm walking to the bed like this, just barely getting to the bed. Listen, I will never build a fire pit ever again. It's over. There are certain productivities that we no longer will do. You see? There was a season where I could do that and more and more and more and more, but no more. It's a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted. And we can't control that. Verse 3. A time to kill and a time to heal. There's seasons in my life where we can fight. A nation goes to war. And there's those that are planning and because they're fighting for what is good, what is right, what is morally best. And there are seasons when no, we need to be the ones back home healing, helping those wounded. I can no longer be doing the fighting. That season is over for me. And I dare not try to fight that. It's God's timetable. God's timetable. A time to tear down, now it goes the other way. Now a time to tear down and a time to build up. I built this beautiful house. It's going to stand 1,000 years. No, 1,000 days maybe. We want to hold on. No. And all through this, listen, we are to be learning, growing in wisdom, and what's of true value. What really matters. I remember, those of you that are younger may identify, I would fight over things that were so ridiculous. So, one of my brothers is here. Fight about marbles, fight about what have you when we were growing up. My house has a few holes in the walls. Fight over things that are nonsense. And all throughout we are to be learning and growing, you see, through these different seasons that God takes us through. Verse 4, a time to weep and a time to laugh. There are seasons where it seems that sadness and weeping will never end. I'm always sad. I'm always crying. It's so grievous. It's a season. Grow through it. Learn. Because that too will pass. It will pass. And there are seasons that we laugh more than usual. We laugh more than... I look at my granddaughter and I just like, oh my goodness. Woo-hoo-hoo. She's just awesome. Just awesome. You know, let me stop being a pastor. Let me just spend time with her. I just can't hardly stand it. It's just the joy that's there. And more comes, and it may not be that, it might be something else, but there's seasons of laughter, more than usual. And then, a time to mourn. Literally, the word there in the Hebrew is wailing. There's a time for wailing, and a time for dancing. There are seasons where some profound pain comes. Profound, intense pain where we cry out wailing. It may not be one day. It may be a few months, a few years of really hurting. But that too passes. And there's a time of dancing, of rejoicing. You see, and it goes on. You see this ups and downs of life, but all through it, we are to be growing and learning, gaining in wisdom. In fact, now let's jump over to verse 9 for time's sake. And the great writer here raises the question, really, of the whole book. What profit is there to the worker from that which he toils? That's really the question of the whole book. Look at chapter 1 and verse 3. Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 3. What advantage, what benefit, what profit, in other words, does the man have in all his work which he does under the sun? What's the whole purpose of this life? What's the benefit? We go through all these ups and downs. What is it? And he doesn't answer the question. Why? Point. Learn. Grow. Gain wisdom through what you're going through. Gain insight. You see? Oh, what is the profit? I'll say something at the end, but he just leaves it hanging there. And then he says, verse 10, I have seen the task which God has given to the sons of men, with which they are to occupy themselves. Well, what is that task? You know what it is? To learn and grow. To investigate. To ask questions. And it can actually be pretty grievous. Now, God designed the universe in such a way that we are to grow and learn and be excited over discovering things. We're to always be learning. Is like, wow, I didn't know that. My word, look at that. The problem is that we live in a fallen world. And as we discover and as we grow, we're going to find out some things that are very painful. Very painful. But we cannot stop asking questions. Listen. It is in our very constitution. It is in our very being. This is the way God made us. To ask questions all the time. And to be learning. Look at it right there in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Verse 12. Or verse 13. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 and verse 13. Here the writer is saying, I really went to look for wisdom and learning. Look at. And I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under the heaven. And it was a grievous task. It was the Hebrew there is occupation. This is actually my occupation that God gave. That God has given to the sons of men to afflict with them with. Remember when I said, God cursed the woman and the man for what purpose? So that they would see their need. And this is an ongoing need in life for us to feel our need of God. And that's the danger we live in our times because we can so numb ourselves to the need of God. I can have all kinds of goodies come my way and numb the need of God. Here the writer says, this is this searching for knowledge and searching for understanding. That's a task God gave us. And sometimes it gets grievous. It should be joyous as we discover new things, right? You have children, you have a new job, you learn something. It's like, wow, this is awesome. But then the more you learn, you also see more of the fallenness. In fact, the reality is right there in verse 18. Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 18. This is something that it's not too pleasant. Ecclesiastes 1 and verse 18, because in much wisdom there is much grief, and increased knowledge results in increased pain. So don't help me learn more. I'm just going to have more pain. You know, keep all your knowledge, man. Let me just drink a Slurpee or something. I don't know. Make me feel good. But that goes against God's design. That goes against our very constitution. Don't fight it. You see? That's the whole point of Ecclesiastes 3. God is absolutely sovereign. And as the year goes to an end and we're facing a new year, keep learning, keep growing. Back in chapter 3 and verse 10, that's what he said. Look, I've seen the task that God has given to the sons of men. It's there. We can't avoid it. And then he says in verse 11, he has made everything appropriate in his time. The word there is beautiful. He has made everything fit just right. The ups and downs in life, they actually fit together. We don't see it because we don't see the beginning from the end. But he knows. In fact, that's what he says now. He has also set eternity in their heart, meaning you're going to keep asking questions. What is this about God and eternity? And we're always going to be asking questions. Yet, so that man will not find out the work of God, which God has done from the beginning even to the end. We won't figure it all out. We will not figure it all out. But we're meant to keep learning and growing. Are you seeking to grow and learn? Or are you just fighting to make life work? Point here. You don't know how it works. I don't know how it works. God is absolutely sovereign. And we must submit ourselves to the sovereignty of God. So now he says, well, we're supposed to keep learning. Man, how do I pass the time, man? How do I go through life like this? Well, seek to enjoy what you can enjoy. That's what verse 12 and 13 say. You see? How do we go? I know that there's nothing better for them to rejoice and to do good in one's lifetime. Keep doing what is right and rejoice in what you can rejoice. You see? In the legitimate things that you can. You enjoy some good piece of music, man, raise the volume in your bedroom. You enjoy whatever, as long as it's legitimate under God, enjoy it, man. God gave us taste buds, for heaven's sake, to have pleasure. Now, obviously, there's always balances, and we go nuts, and we have to be careful, you know, but enjoy as best you can. And keep doing what is right. In the midst of all the disappointments and all the ups and downs, keep doing there's nothing better, he says. And then finally, verse 13. Moreover, that every man who eats and drinks sees good in all his labor. It is a gift of God, the actual eating and drinking. Isn't that so basic? Isn't that so basic? Some of you are smiling and say, oh, preach it, brother. Eating and drinking. But we live in times of fast food. I remember going to Australia, and you've heard this story before, and we've stayed there a couple of weeks, really understanding the culture and reading and so forth. So when we would go to the town, to people's homes, we'd know what was going on. Well, there's a few things they missed. And that morning, we headed out on the train to the city. We were going to Sydney, Australia, and we got there, and it was like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I was starving. I hadn't eaten anything. And so we get to the house, and finally, we'll talk, who are you? Where are you from? No, Texas. Ooh, you all carry shotguns in your pickups all the time? Like, no. Anyway, we started talking. I was just starving. So then the mother, it's the whole family, the mother says, oh, Mr. Martinez, are you ready for tea? I'm going, tea? I'm starving. What is tea? Well, there in Australia, tea is the main meal. But I didn't know. Are you ready for tea? I looked at her, yes. Well, I didn't know how it worked. So yeah, they brought tea, but then they brought this hors d'oeuvres, right? Little finger foods, and I just made a pig of myself. I was starving. And so every once in a while they looked at me and I'm going, okay, I'm starving, sorry. Well, after the hors d'oeuvres, then they bring the main meal. And I'm going, oh my goodness, a big old lamb and meat all over the place. And I was starved. I was packed with my hors d'oeuvres. Enjoying food. And we sat around that tea for about 3 hours. Talking and enjoying and eating together. Oh my. These days, we eat and drink within 10 minutes. I mean, even the Christmas meal. Within 10, 15 minutes, everybody's up and gone on their cell phone or what have you. 15 minutes. And we miss out on enjoying the very basic things of life. A piece of good toast and coffee should last 30 minutes, man, not 30 seconds. You know? And that's what he's saying here. Look, he who eats and drinks seeks the good in all his labor. It is the gift of God. The very simple things of life. To be able to sit out on the back porch. And this happened once, but I haven't forgotten it. It was early in the morning. I got up and went by myself. I went up on the back porch and I was sipping coffee. And there were the cows grazing. And further the next property was a horse grazing. Like, wow, what a beautiful sight. And this coffee is great. And then some birds started coming and landing on the fence and started chirping. And I'm like, how blessed I am. Isn't that great? Just for that little thing. It's so basic, and God was feeding me through just viewing that. But we miss it. We miss it. And God says, no, enjoy the basic things of life. There will be ups and downs. It's a time to give birth, a time to die, a time to be productive, a time where our productivity is going to be zero. And we must embrace all of those times. And we must be willing to learn and grow all during those times. You see? And so when we came right down to it, what we need is to get in line with God's will, God's plans, God's timetable. And the more in line we are with His timetable, guess what? We're going to enjoy more of life. That's the point of the whole passage. Don't fight the will of God. Don't fight the sovereign, awesome will of God. Because He really has what is good for us. If we're willing to learn and to grow and enjoy the basic things of life. You see? So we say, Proverbs 1:7, by way of application, Proverbs 1 verse 7 says this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. I don't care if you're 10 years old or 80 years old. All of us have always something to learn, brand new. Something that we've never learned before. And God is saying, I want to. This is the way I designed you, to always give you something new. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. So we want to learn especially about the things of God. Especially about the things of God. That's the beginning of knowledge that really counts. We can have all kinds of knowledge of hydraulics, of computers, of the moon, of the stars, of the sun. We can have all kinds of knowledge. And if we do not connect it to the knowledge of God, it's coming very short. At the very least, it's coming very short. So, to enjoy learning. Enjoy learning. You know, and what happens? Instead of enjoying learning, we end up competing with one another. And we end up missing out on what God has. There's a particular town I lived for about 7-8 years. And one of the characteristics of that town was this. That no matter who, just about anybody you talk to, they weren't impressed. They would always come up with something better. You know, did you know that I had this great experience going to Australia, come back? Oh, yeah, but I went to India. What do you think about that? Like, so, look what I did. Can't you enjoy it? You know, did you try that restaurant? Oh, my God, this got this fajita. Oh, yeah, but did you try this other restaurant? I went to that one. Like, no matter who you talk to, there was always competition. And instead of enjoying and the learning, no, we start comparing each other. Oh, what a waste. Instead of discovering, God says, I designed you that way, that you should enjoy discovering, learning. So as you enter 2014, what new thing are you going to learn about your spouse? What new thing are you going to learn about your children, your parents? Stay open. What do you think are you going to learn through your cancer? Through your past abuse? To the lonely people that are next to you? People that are struggling with homosexuality or lesbianism? What are you going to learn? Are you open to learning? Or are we just judgmental? Stay open to learn and enjoy what God has. Yeah, there's going to be some more pain. A time to die. Time to give birth. The ups and downs of life. There's no way around it. No way around it. Don't fight it. Don't fight God's timetable. Really is the next application. Right? Don't fight God's timetable. So where are you? Are you a teenager? With all the pressures and dangers. It's a war zone in high school, junior high. It's a war zone. It's awful. Learn, grow, gain wisdom. Are you in college? Oh my goodness, I remember when I started college, they couldn't feed me enough. They couldn't give me enough. I was so ravenous for knowledge. Anything. I mean, even English, can you believe that? I loved even English. I mean, well, some of you are crazy about English. But just about anything. Biology, physics, world history. I mean, I couldn't get enough. You know? And so wherever you are now, don't fight it. Don't fight God's timetable. I'm learning that myself right now. 2014, November 2014, I'll be 60 years old. My father passed away at 62. Charles Spurgeon, one of the greatest preachers ever, died at 57. Whitfield, again, one of the greatest preachers ever, 57, 58 years old, he died. I want to be 60. More than ever before, I realize I'm on borrowed time. I'm on borrowed time. Should I get all gloomy and, oh my goodness? No. Let me learn. Okay, I'm not as productive as I used to be. Let me learn. Let me embrace where I am. See God's goodness in what He's allowing me to learn. You see? Where are you? Don't fight God's timetable. Don't fight it. Finally, when we harmonize with God's will, God's sovereign plan for ourselves, God's pleasure, we end up getting pleasure. We end up getting pleasure. Turn to Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58, verse 13 and 14. Isaiah 58, verse 13 and 14. If because of the Sabbath you turn your foot from doing your own pleasure on my holy day. Okay? We're telling the Israelites, okay, you're supposed to keep the Sabbath. You're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. It's hard because I can't make money. Okay, I'm going to let go to make money on the Sabbath, and I'm going to, obey the Lord. And call the Sabbath a delight. Call it a delight. The holy day of the Lord honorable. And shall honor it. Ceasing from your own ways, from seeking your own pleasure and speaking your own words. Stop doing that. Focus on the Lord. Then, look at verse 14. Then you will take delight in the Lord, and I will make you ride on the heights of the earth, and I will feed you with the heritage of Jacob your father. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. You let go of doing your own thing, align yourself with my will. You're going to have delights. You're going to have delights. Well, what's God's will? Let me align myself with God's will. What's God's will? Well, I'm going to go through three things real quickly because it literally says this is God's will. Okay? Now, some of us start thinking, well, what's God's will? That girl or this one? This job or that one? Should I buy this dress or this one? There's some deeper, much weightier things. Real quickly, 1 Thessalonians and over the New Testament. If you just want to write it down, you can, and then go back later if you'd like. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 3. 1 Thessalonians 4 and verse 3. If you ever wanted to ask the question, well, what's God's will? 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and verse 3. That each of you know how to possess his own vessel in sanctification and honor. Verse 3. For this is the will of God. It says it right there. You need to know Greek. You do not need to know Greek. It's right there. See it? For this is the will of God, your sanctification. That is, that you abstain from sexual immorality. And in our times, we have tsunami amounts of sexualization of everything. Everything. God's will is sanctification. Stay away from immorality. That is a fight. Many are fighting. And it is bloody. That's enough right there. But it doesn't stop. So sanctification. Right there in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 and verse 18. 1 Thessalonians 5 and verse 18. In everything give thanks, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. You don't have to hunt around. You don't have to seek interpretation. It is God's will for you in Christ Jesus. To be thankful for everything. Sanctification, thankfulness. The greatest thing about God's will. This is the last passage I promise you. I think. John 6. The Gospel of John and verse 6. The Gospel of John chapter 6 and verse 28. Gospel of John chapter 6 and verse 28. They said therefore to him, what shall we do that we may work the works of God? Verse 29, Jesus answered said to them, this is the work of God, that you believe in him whom he sent. That's the work of God. That's the will of God. That you believe in Jesus Christ, his son. Will you believe in Jesus Christ or not? That's the will of God. The greatest sin that we know now is to reject Jesus Christ. The will of God is for you to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. When you align yourself with God's will, guess what? You're going to have more delights in life. You're going to have your ups and downs, no way around it. But believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. Will you? I can't force you. Nobody can. Even God is a gentleman. But the offer is there. Will you believe, trust in the Lord Jesus Christ, and forevermore be saved? Sanctification, thanksgiving, trusting in Jesus for salvation, for everything. For everything. Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for your word.